I'm Alyssa O'Neill, 30 years old, and I went from being the invisible one in my own family to working on classified national defense ops. For years, I cleaned up after everyone, paid the bills they forgot, and kept quiet while they mocked me. But when my own father called me a deadbeat in front of the whole family at a barbecue, I made a decision that changed everything. Ever been dismissed by the people you gave everything to? If that's you, drop your story in the comments. You're not alone. Before we dive in, tell me where you're watching from, and if you've ever had to quietly prove someone wrong, hit like and subscribe. What happened next, no one saw coming. My name is Alyssa O'Neill, and for most of my life, I've been the invisible one in my family. Not because I failed to show up, but because I never quite fit the mold they had already decided was worthy of attention. We were a military family through and through. My dad, Staff Sergeant William O'Neill, served 22 years in the Army. Bronze Star, 3 deployments, 2 bad knees. My mother, Karen, played the role of the dutiful military wife, organized, loyal, perpetually exhausted. I had 2 older brothers, Andrew and Max, both of whom followed in my father's footsteps without hesitation. Andrew enlisted the second he turned 18. Max held out for college, but ended up joining ROTC and commissioning as an officer. That was the family script: toughness, loyalty, and discipline measured in years of service and combat stories shared around the dinner table like family heirlooms. I was the 3rd child, the only daughter, and from the beginning, the odd one out. While Andrew was learning to strip a rifle in the garage and Max memorized ranks and codes, I was reading biographies and sketching diagrams of neural networks in the back of my school notebooks. My dad once asked if I planned to do anything useful with my time. I said I was thinking about studying data science. He blinked at me like I'd said I wanted to be a magician. From that point on, he defaulted to calling me the academic, which in our house wasn't a compliment. More of a polite insult. I was never punished, exactly. I followed rules, got good grades, kept to myself. But it was clear early on that my brand of achievement didn't register the same way. Andrew got a barbecue when he graduated from basic. Max got a framed photo of him saluting at his commissioning ceremony. I got a nod when I graduated summa cum laude in computer engineering. I remember standing in our living room, diploma in hand, while Dad told Max to make sure the grill wasn't overheating. Mom took a photo of me, said she'd print it for the fridge, but I never saw it up there. I didn't resent them, not really. I think I had already adjusted my expectations by then. My grandmother on my mom's side used to say, "Some families are good at loving you the way they know how. Others just keep repeating the only version they've ever seen." Ours was definitely the second kind. After graduation, I had about a month before the next stage of my life could begin. I'd accepted a position with a federal contractor that required a full security clearance. I can't say too much even now, but it was part of a cyber intelligence division operating under the Department of Defense. I'd passed the first 2 phases of vetting, but the final background checks and agency onboarding were still underway. In the meantime, I moved back home to save money. It wasn't ideal, but it made sense, at least to me. To everyone else in that house, it looked like failure. "You're 24, my father said one night while stacking dishes in the sink. Living at home like some high school dropout. What are you even doing all day?" I opened my mouth, thought about the classified NDA I had just signed, and closed it again. "Paperwork," I said instead. "Job stuff." Max smirked. "What, like filling out applications for nanny gigs?" I didn't respond. I'd learned by then that pushing back only made it worse. That same week, Andrews started calling me trust fund, a joke about how I must be waiting around for a man to take care of me. One night during dinner, he asked if I wanted him to set me up with one of his army buddies who likes smart girls who can cook. I didn't laugh. Neither did Mom, but she didn't say anything either. She never did. I tried to be useful. I kept the house clean. Grocery shopped. Took care of the dog when Max went on a weekend trip. Paid the water bill one month when I noticed the envelope sitting unopened on the kitchen counter. I didn't announce it, didn't ask for thanks. I just did it, because that's what people do when they're part of a household. But instead of gratitude, I noticed the opposite. The more I helped, the more invisible I became. Like blending into the wallpaper made me easier to ignore. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. But after a while, I couldn't deny the pattern. If Andrew vacuumed once, Mom bragged about it to her friends on the phone. If I cooked and cleaned all week, no one mentioned it. I wasn't lazy. I wasn't directionless. But in their eyes, I wasn't doing anything that counted. The truth was, my career hadn't started yet, not officially. But the work I was preparing for required months of clearance checks, multiple background interviews, and absolute discretion. I couldn't explain that to my family. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't allowed to. Operational security wasn't just a rule, it was federal law. And so, I said nothing. I slept in the converted guest room upstairs, the one with the squeaky floorboards and a window that didn't fully close. Every morning, I got up early, went for a run, and logged into a secure system using an air-gapped laptop issued by the agency. I completed training modules, filed documentation, checked in with my case officer via encrypted messaging. To the average observer, it looked like I was scrolling through Reddit in my pajamas. My dad started referring to me as our little boarder. I heard him say it on the phone one day to a friend. Yeah, Andrew and Max are out there doing real work. Meanwhile, our little boarder's upstairs playing Sudoku all day. He laughed. The friend laughed too. I stood on the staircase holding a basket of clean laundry, not sure whether to go up or down. That weekend, my cousin came over with her fiancé for dinner. During the meal, she asked me what I was up to. I said I was between things at the moment, but something exciting was in the pipeline. My dad jumped in before I could finish. She's taking a gap year from adulting, he said, grinning. Not everyone's built for the workforce, Max added. They all laughed. I didn't. Later that night, my mom found me in the kitchen loading the dishwasher. She handed me a Tupperware of leftovers and said, "They're just teasing. Don't take it so seriously." I nodded, said thank you, and put the container in the fridge. But something about the way she said it stuck with me. Because I realized she didn't know what I was doing either. Not really. She hadn't asked. And I hadn't told her. We were both playing a part in the same quiet misunderstanding. Still, I thought it would pass. Once the clearance finalized, once the paperwork cleared, once the first assignment came through, everything would shift. I just had to make it until then. Keep my head down. Do the chores. Let them think what they wanted. The truth would reveal itself soon enough. But sometimes silence doesn't buy you time. Sometimes it gives people permission to believe the worst of you. And by the time the truth did come out, the distance between us was already wide enough to feel permanent. What I didn't know then was how quickly everything was about to change. Not in theory, not in vague promises, but in one very real, very public moment that would make it impossible for anyone in that house to keep underestimating me again. Not even my father. Not even for a second. 2 weeks after Max's promotion to captain, we had a backyard cookout. Dad grilled steak tips, Mom made her usual potato salad, and everyone brought something store-bought and pretended it was homemade. There were folding chairs in a half-circle on the lawn and the familiar hum of laughter that came from stories I'd already heard a dozen times, mostly about the boys. Andrew's new team in South Carolina. Max's last training rotation at Fort Benning. Their lives had a rhythm everyone could follow. Predictable. Concrete. Honorable. Mine didn't. And that made people uncomfortable. I stood at the drink table refilling the lemonade when Uncle Terry walked over. He wore his usual sun visor and polos like he lived on a golf course instead of working front desk security at the VA clinic. "So, Alyssa," he said, his voice too casual, "your mom says you're home for a bit. Taking a little breather." He smiled like it was a compliment. I smiled back like I didn't feel insulted. Something like that. Nothing wrong with figuring things out. Lord knows I didn't get serious about my career until I was almost 30. I nodded, though I didn't relate to anything he just said. I'd been serious about my career since high school. It just didn't come with epaulets and deployment stories. Later, I found out he wasn't the only one confused. My cousin Renee, who studied nursing at community college and had recently posted an engagement photo shoot with a man who always wore camo, pulled me aside after dessert. "Hey, my mom was asking if you're okay," she said, lowering her voice like she was sharing something confidential. She thought you had some fancy job after college, but now you're just like, here? I tried not to flinch. Yeah, I'm still working. Just can't talk much about it. Renee nodded like that made perfect sense and then added, well, she thought maybe you got laid off or something, but I told her, like, no way. Alyssa would have said. Except I wouldn't have. I couldn't. And that's the part that stung. Rumors were easier to accept than ambiguity. Especially in our family. If something didn't have a title, a badge, or a certificate framed on a wall, it might as well not exist. My dad used to say, people either pull their weight or they don't. In his eyes, I wasn't pulling anything. The next weekend, he asked me to help Max move some old gym equipment from the garage to the basement. I said yes, even though I was already scheduled to review encrypted training modules for my upcoming assignment window. While we were shifting a rusted weight rack down the narrow stairs, he said, you know, it'd be nice if you got some fresh air once in a while. Sitting around all day isn't good for you. I laughed awkwardly. I run every morning. He grunted, yeah, but I mean doing something real. You've been here 3 months, Alyssa. At your age, I was married with 2 kids and halfway through my second deployment. The implication wasn't subtle. I wasn't just falling behind, I was already losing. I didn't answer him. I gripped the metal bar and kept moving. That evening, over meatloaf and mashed potatoes, Max casually mentioned he'd been asked to lead a multinational exercise in Germany. Mom clapped her hands together and called him a rising star. Andrew chimed in over speakerphone about how proud he was, and Dad raised his glass and toasted both his sons for being exactly the kind of men this country needs more of. No one looked at me. I hadn't even been asked how my day went. That pattern repeated itself. At every family meal, every birthday, every casual Sunday where Andrew dropped in wearing his unit sweatshirt and was instantly treated like a celebrity. I kept waiting for someone to remember I had news too, even if I couldn't give details. But the assumption had calcified. Alyssa was stuck. Alyssa had no direction. Alyssa was just back home for now. I watched from the edge of every room as my identity narrowed. It didn't matter that I was finishing high-security cybersecurity rotations. That I'd been cleared through layers of vetting most people didn't even know existed. That I was already linked to federal operations most civilians would never hear about. None of that fit into the frame they'd built for me, and so they stopped seeing me at all. The worst part wasn't the jokes. It was how normal it became. Better be careful, Dad said once while cutting firewood in the yard. You'll rot your 20s away in this house if you're not careful. I'm fine, I said without looking up. Being fine ain't the same as doing something. He tossed another log onto the pile. Even Mom, who used to defend me in her own quiet way, started slipping. She'd pass by while I was at the kitchen table on my secure laptop and say, I just worry sometimes. You've always been such a smart girl. But eventually, you'll have to start taking life seriously. I didn't answer. I never did. That was the rule. The job I'd signed on for wasn't the kind you could share in group texts or post about online. The official start date was classified. My travel itinerary would be sealed. My operations, if assigned, wouldn't even be disclosed to parts of the agency not directly involved. Telling the truth wasn't just discouraged, it was illegal. I told myself it was just temporary. That once things became official, once the badge was issued and the orders formalized, the narrative would correct itself. But that was a fantasy. I saw it now, their minds were already made up. I was the one who came home because she had nowhere else to go. The one who couldn't hack it out there. The one who wasn't like her brothers. What I didn't realize until then was how quickly perception solidified. It didn't take a scandal or a failure. Just silence. A gap in the story people decided to fill themselves. And once that story spread, that Alyssa had peaked in college, that she was still figuring it out, that maybe she didn't have what it took to stand on her own, the rest of the pieces fell into place. I became the backdrop to everyone else's highlight reel. They stopped asking me anything that mattered. Just made assumptions and layered jokes on top. Even my younger cousin Noah, who had barely graduated high school, asked if I was still working at Target or something. I'd never worked at Target. At night, I'd lie awake replaying the moments where I could have said something, even vaguely. Maybe if I'd pushed back earlier, challenged the tone of their jokes, told Renee's mom she was wrong, maybe the narrative wouldn't have spread so fast. But the truth is, I hadn't spoken up because I was waiting. Not just for clearance, but for proof. For the moment when the world would see who I really was, not the shadow they imagined. Until then, I kept quiet. I washed dishes, showed up for birthdays, helped Max troubleshoot his home Wi-Fi even though I knew the problem was his refusal to update the firmware. I stayed out of arguments, bit my tongue when Andrew claimed his field experience was worth more than any degree. I let them believe what they wanted, because the only thing worse than being doubted, I thought, was breaking protocol. But silence has a weight, and mine was getting harder to carry. It was the last Saturday of August, the annual family barbecue, and the backyard was crowded by noon. Folding tables were draped in vinyl tablecloths, the kind with little stars and stripes that we reused every year. Kids tore across the lawn chasing each other with plastic water guns. The older uncles claimed their usual territory under the oak tree, each one slowly settling into collapsible lawn chairs like it was a ritual. My mom was running back and forth between the kitchen and the patio, carrying platters of deviled eggs and coleslaw. I was on grill duty with Max and Andrew, mostly because I'd volunteered and no one told me not to. I'd prepped the ribs the night before, dry rub, slow marinated, wrapped and ready to go. Dad came over while I was brushing sauce onto them and made a half-hearted comment about how he didn't know I could cook. I smiled without looking up. "You've had my chili 3 times this month." He grunted. "Guess I thought that came out of a can." I didn't respond. I handed off the tongs to Andrew and went inside to grab more foil. The kitchen was already crowded, aunts slicing pie, cousins stealing potato chips, music playing too loudly from someone's Bluetooth speaker. I nodded and smiled my way through it, found the foil, and came back out. By the time everything was done and plated, people had settled into that mid-afternoon rhythm where drinks are flowing, plates are full, and conversations grow louder with each round. Someone connected a mic and speaker to the little amp Dad uses for backyard karaoke. That was the cue every year. He made a short toast, thanking the family, teasing the kids, praising his sons, and reminding everyone what a real American summer should look like. I was standing to the side with a tray of ribs, wiping my hands with a towel, when I heard his voice. "All right, listen up," he said into the mic, tapping it like an MC at a high school talent show. "We got the whole crew here today, all the nieces, nephews, grandkids. Even Aunt Sandy flew in from Arizona." Scattered cheers. "And of course, we're especially proud of our boys, Captain Max O'Neill," he paused for applause, just back from leading training in Germany. "And Andrew, who's heading up his team down at Fort Jackson. Hell, we've got so much brass in this family we could melt it down and build a tank." Laughter. Applause. Clinking bottles. I stood behind the drinks table now, ribs set down in front of me, and watched. I knew this part of the speech. I'd heard versions of it since I was 12. I knew where the beats landed, the applause line, the patriotic nod, the self-deprecating joke about his knees. But this time, there was a new addition. "And then," he said, drawing out the pause, "then there's her." His eyes scanned the yard until they landed on me. Still sleeping in till noon. Deadbeat at 30. The silence was sharp. Then it cracked, nervous laughter from a few cousins, real belly laughs from Andrew, and Max. Someone said, "Oh damn," under their breath. My uncle coughed into his cup to hide a chuckle. I didn't move. I stood there, one hand still on the foil, the other resting against the edge of the table. No one said anything. Not Mom. Not Max. Not a single person stepped in or tried to wave it off. Dad laughed into the mic. "Just kidding. She's got plans." He said it like it was a punchline. Then he handed the mic to Andrew, who jumped into some story about his last deployment. I picked up the tray again and carried it to the far end of the buffet table. Set it down next to the cornbread. Didn't say anything. I didn't look at anyone. For the rest of the afternoon, I moved in slow motion. Collected trash. Refilled drinks. Helped calm a screaming toddler who scraped her knee near the steps. A few people tried to engage me in small talk. I nodded, gave half smiles, pretended to care about someone's recent vacation to Myrtle Beach. I felt like a shadow in my own skin. No one mentioned the joke. No one apologized. Around 6, I sat on the porch steps by myself while everyone gathered for dessert. I watched my dad lean over a cooler, cracking open another beer, and slap Andrew on the back as they laughed about something else I wasn't invited into. My mother walked past me with a tray of plastic forks and said nothing. She didn't make eye contact, just kept moving. That was the moment it really landed. They weren't waiting for me to prove anything. They weren't hoping I'd get it together. They had made up their minds. The story was written, and I wasn't the author. Deadbeat. It wasn't just a word. It was a verdict. And the worst part? It didn't matter that it wasn't true. It didn't matter that in 2 weeks I would be stepping into a job that required higher clearance than anyone in that yard had ever dreamed of. It didn't matter that I was already attached to a project that, if successful, would end up influencing national security policy. None of that mattered. Not to them. Because they didn't see it. And because they didn't see it, it wasn't real. That night, I stood in the doorway of the guest room for a long time, looking at the half-packed suitcase I'd left under the bed. I thought about finishing the job, tossing in my clothes, laptop, toiletries, driving away before the sun came up. I had enough saved to get a place for a few weeks near the regional field office. I could make it work. But something stopped me. It wasn't hope. It wasn't some desperate desire to be accepted. It was something colder, harder, more rooted in the part of me that had endured this family's indifference for years. Let them talk, I thought. Let them finish the story. Because they were about to learn how wrong they were. I didn't leave. I stayed. And I waited. 3 days after the barbecue, I met up with Natalie at the little diner we used to go to after high school track meets. We'd both grown out of strawberry milkshakes and greasy fries, but the booths were the same: cracked red leather, sticky laminated menus, a server who called everyone Han. She slid into the seat across from me and didn't ask how I was. She never did. She just waited. I stirred the ice in my water, staring at the condensation sliding down the side of the glass. It's almost over, I said finally. Clearance finalized last week. Final briefings wrapped this month. Then I'm in. Natalie blinked once. You serious? I nodded. No more fake temp job? No more pretending you're just freelancing? No more anything. I'll have my official placement, contract badge, the works. She leaned back, arms crossed. You gonna tell them? I didn't need her to clarify who. I knew exactly who she meant. I looked out the window. A kid on a skateboard stumbled off the curb and nearly face-planted into a mailbox. No one else seemed to notice. I don't think it matters, I said. Natalie raised an eyebrow. That's new. I shrugged. After Saturday? I'm done handing them pieces of me to tear apart. I hadn't told her about the word. About how it landed in the center of the backyard like a dropped grenade, silent and heavy and hot. I didn't need to. She knew me too well. Knew how much I'd put up with. Knew the difference between swallowing it and letting it sink into your skin. I just keep thinking, I said, they have no idea what I actually do. None. And yet they've already decided who I am. Isn't that the most dangerous kind of ignorance? She asked, not smiling. Thinking you've got someone figured out just because you've seen their laundry basket. I exhaled a sound that was almost a laugh. They think I'm unemployed. Or stuck. Or, I don't know, avoiding adulthood. And in 2 weeks, Natalie said, you'll be on classified payroll. Working defense-level intel. Probably outranking half your cousins before you even show up. It's not about rank. She didn't say anything. It's not, I repeated. Okay, she said, though her voice made it clear she didn't believe me. The truth was, it used to be. When I came home after graduation, I told myself I could wait it out. That the temporary judgment would pass. That my family would be embarrassed for assuming I was aimless once they saw where I landed. But months had gone by, and the silence had turned into a narrative, then into a punchline. Now it was a belief. One they shared with others. One they didn't even try to hide. I sipped my water again. What do you do with people like that? People who insist you're someone you're not just because it's easier for them. Natalie peeled the corner of her napkin. You stop performing for them. I'm not trying to perform. No. But you keep hoping they'll notice without you saying anything. I looked at her, the lump forming in my throat more from recognition than emotion. I used to think if I just waited long enough, the work would speak for itself. And it will, she said. Just not in the way you thought. The drive home that evening felt different. Not better. Not worse. Just clearer. I wasn't angry anymore, not really. There was no energy left for that. I'd reached the part of the story where anger gives way to understanding, the kind that stings more because it stays. I pulled into the driveway and sat in the car with the engine off, watching the porch light flicker. My father's truck was in the usual spot. My mother's car tucked neatly next to the recycling bin. Inside, I could see shadows moving in the kitchen. Probably Max, refilling his water bottle like he was about to hike Everest instead of heading to the gym for the third time that day. I didn't go inside right away. Instead, I thought about the first time I helped flag a breach on an internal test server. It had been during week 6 of secure systems training. I caught something that even the supervisor had missed, a backdoor masking itself as a legitimate cache function. It had been an exercise, but the congratulatory nod from the training lead had felt more real than any birthday card my dad had ever given me. They'll never know about that. Or the debriefing I'd completed with a team that was building predictive models for phishing campaigns targeting naval defense networks. Or the classified architecture reviews I helped prepare, documents that would be shredded and deleted within 24 hours of being seen. I'd built an entire career already. Quietly. Legally. Invisibly. And still, my dad called me a deadbeat with ribs in my hand. I finally stepped inside around 9. The TV was on in the living room, some detective show rerun my mom watched on autopilot. She looked up when I came in and gave a tired smile. You eat? Yeah, I'm good. Don't forget to move your car in the morning. Your dad's getting the gutters cleaned. Okay, that was it. No apology. No follow-up from the barbecue. No sense that anything out of the ordinary had happened. I went upstairs and opened my laptop. Checked the secure channel. A new briefing assignment was listed, DC base, initial clearance run with physical badge pickup. I was to report in 5 days. There was a second message from the liaison. A car would be arranged for transport to the pickup site. Standard protocol for new clearance level initiates. Normally, I would have scheduled it for a local lot, somewhere quiet and low profile. But instead, I typed back, pickup from residential address. Front driveway. Confirmed. I sat back, breathing slowly. Not out of vindication. Not excitement. Just peace. I didn't need them to understand anymore. That ship had sailed. I didn't need to win an argument or deliver a dramatic monologue explaining all the things they got wrong. The truth was coming, whether they were ready or not. And for the first time in a long time, I was okay with letting the facts speak louder than I ever could. The email came through at 7:42 a.m. on a Wednesday. I was in the middle of scraping burnt egg off the skillet. Max had left it on the stove again, when my phone buzzed. The subject line was short, final clearance approval. I stared at it for a few seconds before opening the message. The rest was straightforward. My TS/SCI clearance had been granted. The compartmentalized access was finalized. Assignment start date, pending field orientation, and formal handoff. At the bottom of the message, it listed my unit placement, contractor embedded in a Department of Defense task force. Cyber Threat and Signal Analysis Division. Assigned to the Pentagon's Emerging Technology Branch. There was a note from the program liaison. An in-person briefing will be conducted prior to onboarding. Respond with your preferred location for pickup or report. I reread it 3 times before setting my phone down on the counter. Then I rinsed the pan, wiped down the stove, and loaded the dishwasher like it was any other morning. Upstairs, I sat down at my desk and composed a short reply, pickup from residential address. Friday morning. 0930 hours. There was a long pause before the automated system acknowledged receipt. 30 minutes later, the liaison confirmed, vehicle will arrive at designated location. ID required. No announcement. That part made me smile. No announcement. The irony wasn't lost on me. It would be the same address my family believed I was wasting my life in. The same driveway where they parked their judgment every weekend like it had a reserved spot. I had thought about scheduling the meeting offsite, like most new recruits did. Quiet, efficient. No theatrics. But after the barbecue, after the word deadbeat was served up alongside ribs and coleslaw, I didn't feel like playing it quiet anymore. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't staging a moment. I just didn't feel the need to hide anymore. If they were going to decide who I was based on surface-level assumptions, then they could see the surface of this too. That week, I said nothing. I woke up early, went for my runs, completed my pre-briefing training modules, cleaned the house, paid the water bill again. They'd forgotten. I picked up groceries on Thursday because I knew the fridge would be empty by Saturday, and my mom hated last-minute errands when people were coming over. She mentioned the upcoming family cookout again on Thursday night. Nothing big this time, she said. Just burgers, maybe chicken if it's on sale. I nodded and said I'd handle the grill. She smiled and told me I was good at that. As if that had ever mattered. I marked the date on my phone. Not for the barbecue. For the pickup. Friday. I didn't sleep much the night before. Not because I was nervous. That part had passed weeks ago. More like something in me was restless. Not excited, not scared. Just aware that something was ending. That this version of my life, quiet, ignored, misunderstood, was winding down. I got up before sunrise and went for a longer run than usual. 5 miles around the neighborhood loop. My shoes hit the pavement in rhythm with the thought I couldn't shake. They're not going to know what to do with this. By the time I got back, the house was awake. Dad was already outside setting up chairs. Max was dragging a speaker across the patio. Mom was in the kitchen prepping potato salad. Andrew wasn't there yet, but I heard his name 3 times before 8 a.m. No one mentioned me. I took a quick shower and changed into something neutral. Jeans, clean sneakers, a fitted t-shirt. I didn't want to look dramatic. I just didn't want to look like someone still waiting for her life to start. At 9:28 a.m., I heard the car pull up. No sirens. No logos. Just a plain black government sedan. Tinted windows, subtle ID badge on the dash. A woman stepped out, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit. She didn't smile, didn't hesitate. Just looked around once and walked up the driveway. My dad was dragging a cooler toward the garage when she passed him. He paused, looked at her with that vague guarded expression he used on unfamiliar delivery guys and new neighbors. She didn't acknowledge him. She stopped 5 feet from me and said, flatly, "Alyssa O'Neill?" I nodded. "That's me. Ready?" I grabbed my folder from the front bench. Yep. The front door opened behind us. My mom's voice, "Alyssa? Who's that?" The woman turned slightly, eyes still on me. I could feel the whole backyard freezing, not visibly, not yet. But something in the air shifted. My father set the cooler down. Max stood up from where he was adjusting the speaker wires. The woman pulled a black folder from her briefcase and opened it. Flashed a badge. DoD Contractor Clearance Seal. "We're here to escort Ms. O'Neill to her assignment briefing." Silence. Not just quiet, but real silence. The kind that only happens when every available brain cell is trying to catch up. I heard someone drop a utensil on the patio. A clatter. No one moved. I turned to my mom, who stood half-shielded in the doorway with a dish towel in her hand. "I'll be back later," I said. "Don't forget to pull the ribs out of the fridge around 11. She opened her mouth, but didn't say anything. Max finally spoke. "Wait, what is this?" I didn't answer. I got in the car. As we pulled out of the driveway, I saw Andrew's truck turning the corner, slowing as the black sedan passed him. His window was down. His sunglasses reflected the sun, and I couldn't tell if he saw me or not. I didn't turn around to check. Inside the vehicle, the officer handed me a sealed envelope with my formal start date and credentials. She didn't make small talk. Neither did I. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I needed to. The heat had already settled into the yard by 11, the kind that makes paper plates wilt and potato salad sweat under the plastic wrap. My mom was moving between the kitchen and the back patio in her apron, calling for someone to bring out the folding chairs. Dad stood near the grill with a spatula in one hand and a beer in the other. He was telling Max and Andrew a story I'd heard a dozen times, something about his first deployment and a busted Humvee in 90-degree heat. They laughed like it was new. Andrew slapped the hood of Max's truck for emphasis, like it helped land the punchline. I was inside slicing watermelon. No one had asked me to. I just did it because I always did, the unspoken prep work that made everything function. The same way I refilled the ice trays, reloaded the propane tank, restocked the cooler. I didn't need a list. I knew what needed doing, and I did it. Through the screen door, I heard my name once. My dad, again with the joke about how I'd finally woken up before noon. Max chuckled. Someone added, "She'll get it together one of these years." I wiped my hands on a dish towel and set the tray down on the counter. Checked my phone. 9:26 a.m. The conversation outside grew louder. More people were arriving, uncles, aunts, neighbors. Kids squealing near the sprinkler. The stereo crackled to life with some classic rock playlist that hadn't changed in 5 years. I watched through the blinds as my cousin Renee pulled in, already waving as she climbed out of her car. Her fiancé stayed behind to unload folding chairs from the trunk. 9:28, I slipped my go-bag out from under the entryway bench and placed it by the door. Just a standard black backpack. Nothing flashy. A few documents, my ID, and the pre-clearance folder the agency had issued 2 months ago. I checked the zipper, not because I doubted it was closed, but because my hands needed something to do. At 9:30 on the dot, the car pulled up. It didn't make a sound beyond the low crunch of tires on gravel. A black government sedan, windows tinted, no emblems. The kind you don't notice until you're supposed to. For a moment, no one outside reacted. Then the driver's door opened, and a woman stepped out. Tall, efficient, suit pressed sharp. She didn't glance at the grill, or the stereo, or the cooler someone was unpacking near the fire pit. Her eyes scanned the yard with quiet precision. I opened the front door before she had to knock. She saw me and gave a slight nod. "Alyssa O'Neill?" "Yes," I said. "I'm here for your briefing escort." Vehicles secure. I stepped out onto the porch and heard the noise around the yard falter. It didn't stop all at once, it staggered. Someone cut the music. A chair scraped against the concrete. The sound of laughter dulled like someone had turned the volume down mid-sentence. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain. I just picked up my bag and closed the door behind me. I walked past the cooler, past the tray of hamburger buns, past my uncle setting up the horseshoes. Every set of eyes followed me like I'd grown wings. The woman in the suit moved with quiet purpose. She didn't introduce herself to anyone else. She didn't have to. We were halfway to the car when my father finally spoke. "What the hell is going on?" He wasn't yelling. He wasn't laughing either. It was the same tone he used when the lawnmower broke midsummer, and he couldn't figure out why. I didn't stop walking. "Alyssa," he said again, louder this time. "Where are you going?" I didn't answer. The woman opened the rear passenger door, stepped aside, and waited. I slid into the back seat. She shut the door behind me, walked calmly around to the front, and got in without another word. We pulled away from the curb in complete silence. I glanced back once, through the rear window. The image stuck with me more than I expected. My father still standing near the grill, spatula in one hand, staring at the empty spot in the driveway. My mother frozen near the patio table, her hand still holding the bag of hamburger buns I'd unpacked half an hour earlier. Renee whispering something to her fiancé. Max and Andrew both standing, confused, like the game had started and no one told them the rules. No one followed us. No one called my name again. The ride was smooth and quiet. The interior of the car smelled faintly like leather and clean air. No music. No small talk. Just the hum of the road and the growing distance between me and a version of myself that had already expired. I didn't check my phone. I didn't feel the need to text Natalie. She already knew. The briefing site was a secure field office about 45 minutes outside the city. Gray building, minimal signage, one way in, one way out. The woman escorted me through the checkpoints, verifying ID at each stop, until we reached the secure conference room. The rest was standard procedure. I signed additional clearance documentation, received my physical credentials, confirmed the next phase of training, and was issued a temporary communication device for transition support. I'd be officially starting in 7 days. They asked if I had any questions. I said no. Afterward, the liaison offered to call a ride or arrange drop-off back at the house. I declined. I'll get where I need to go, I said. She nodded, no judgment in her expression. Just that same quiet efficiency. The kind of professionalism I'd been training for. The kind that didn't need praise or validation to function. I left the building with the sun high overhead and the air sticky against my back. There were no fireworks. No announcement. No applause. Just the calm certainty that everything had shifted. That evening, Natalie texted, "You still alive, O'Neill?" I responded with a photo of the badge clipped to my shirt. No caption. She didn't need one. She sent back 3 emojis: salute, lock, flame. Then another. "You finally let the silence do the talking. Proud of you." I didn't go home that night. Instead, I booked a hotel room under the agency's transitional housing stipend and sat on the bed with a view of the parking lot. I ordered room service. Nothing fancy, just a burger and fries and a Diet Coke. I ate in silence, shoes still on, badge still clipped to my collar. I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I just sat there and let it land. They didn't see it coming. They had no framework for this version of me. The one who didn't need to fight for respect. The one who no longer needed to prove anything. And they never even asked where I went. It started with a missed call. I was at my desk reviewing threat vectors from a recent intercept when the secure line flashed. It wasn't the agency. It wasn't my supervisor. It was my personal phone, tucked into the drawer, face down, the way I always left it during work hours. The screen lit up just long enough for me to see the name, Mom. She didn't leave a voicemail. That night, when I was back at the hotel and the badge was off my collar, I listened to the silence of the room before calling her back. It rang once, then twice. "Hello," she answered like she'd been holding the phone in her hand for hours. I hesitated for a beat. "Hey." "Oh, thank God," she exhaled. "Are you okay?" "I'm good." There was a pause. Then her voice dropped quieter, like she wasn't sure who might be listening. "Are you in some kind of trouble?" I blinked at the ceiling. "No, well, what's going on?" "You left with that woman. That car." And no one's heard anything since. I leaned back against the headboard. "I'm working." "That's it?" "Yeah," I said. "That's it." Another pause. "Your father thinks maybe you joined something. That this is some program." I didn't correct her. "I just want to know you're safe." "I am." She sighed. The kind of sigh that usually came before offering leftovers or asking if I'd remembered to pay the power bill. But this time, she didn't fill the space with anything. After a few seconds, I said, "I'll text you when I can." "Okay," she said. Then, quieter, "We didn't mean for it to come out like that." I didn't respond. "I'll let you go," she said finally. "Just take care of yourself." "You too." I hung up. She didn't call again. But the text started not long after. Not from her. Not from Dad. From Max, of all people. "Yo. You good? Where'd you disappear to?" "Heard from Mom you're working now." "What kind of gig is it?" I waited a few hours before replying. "All good. Busy but good." He liked the message but didn't say more. Then Andrew jumped in a day later. "Mom said you got scooped up by some company. Sounds serious. Congrats." I replied, "Thanks. It's going well." No one asked directly. Not about the car. Not about the woman in the suit. Not about the word that still hung in the air like smoke. They wanted reassurance without confrontation. Connection without acknowledgement. And I gave them only what I felt they'd earned, brief, polite replies. No details. No updates. No attempt to bridge what they'd burned. It wasn't revenge. It was recalibration. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I wasn't offering explanations. I wasn't begging to be seen. And I didn't miss them. I got my own place near the agency hub, small apartment, clean, full of quiet. My name wasn't on any public lease. My mail was routed through a box 2 counties over. Part of the job. Part of the life. The agency didn't require secrecy in the social sense. There was no gag order against talking to family. But we were trained on discretion. Trained on how access is earned, not assumed. Just because someone knew your name didn't mean they had clearance. That idea stuck with me. They'd had access to me for years. My time, my energy, my presence. And they used it like background noise. Now, when the silence stretched, they started to feel it. Max sent another message the following week. Grill's been quiet without you. Dad keeps saying he overcooked everything. You coming back anytime soon? I thought about that one for a while. I didn't respond immediately. I didn't know how to answer. Coming back? To what? A version of myself that was tolerated but never respected? Eventually, I typed, not sure. Still figuring out the schedule. He just replied with a thumbs up. I kept the text polite. Neutral. Nothing sharp, nothing warm. Just steady, deliberate distance. Not to punish them, but to draw the line they'd never respected before. Because the truth was, I didn't owe them proximity. And they didn't deserve access just because they'd finally realized they'd lost it. I knew they were confused. Knew they were spinning their own stories now, probably some narrative about how I'd grown up or found my path. As if I hadn't been on it the whole time. But I didn't correct them. I didn't chase clarification. Because this wasn't about winning. It was about boundaries. Quiet ones. The kind you don't announce, you just hold. One night, Andrew sent a video of the backyard, my dad trying to light the grill and cursing under his breath when the starter didn't catch. My mom off camera saying, should have let Alyssa do it. She knew the trick. I watched it once. Didn't save it. Didn't respond. They were starting to feel it. The difference between familiarity and respect. Between access and entitlement. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. But I was clear. They could text. They could wonder. They could replay the moment when the car pulled up and ask themselves what they missed. But if they wanted to be part of the story again, they'd have to ask differently. Speak differently. See me differently. And until then, I'd stay exactly where I was. Working. Thriving. Unreachable, not because I vanished, but because I finally made myself unavailable to people who didn't see the value in showing up. 2 years passed. Not all at once, but in steady increments. Morning alarms. Secure keypads. Long days. Quiet nights. A dozen small routines that built something solid beneath my feet. My apartment now sits on the 7th floor of a building with no nameplate. The kind of place you walk past without noticing. Security-coded elevator. No listed tenants. It's a requirement of the job, but I've grown to like the anonymity. The silence. The fact that I don't have to explain who I am to anyone walking down the hall. My work is consistent. Sometimes intense. Sometimes painfully slow. I've had weeks where I don't see sunlight and others where I spend half my time in briefings, watching people far above my pay grade try to understand systems I helped write. I'm still under contract with the same government task force, cybersecurity, threat modeling, offensive and defensive response. I can't say more than that, even if I wanted to, which I don't. Because now I don't need anyone to understand me to feel real. My income is stable. My badge gets me through more doors than I ever imagined it would. My clearance is permanent. The respect in my field is quiet, professional, no gold stars, no applause. Just the kind of nods you get from people who know what it means to show up, do the work, and not need credit to know you're necessary. I haven't been home much. There was a visit last Christmas, short, quiet, impersonal in the way only family gatherings can be. My mother greeted me like I'd just stepped out for milk and came back 2 years later. My brothers tried to act normal, cracking half-hearted jokes about the ghost sibling. But none of them mentioned the barbecue. Not once. That silence said everything. At one point, my dad was talking to one of his old army friends, someone I'd never met before, and I heard him say, "This is my daughter, Alyssa. She does government stuff." No sarcasm. No smirk. Just a vague shrug, like he wasn't sure what else to say. I didn't correct him. Just smiled, shook the man's hand, and let the conversation move on. Later, in the kitchen, my cousin Renee caught me by the fridge. She glanced around, then leaned in like we were kids passing notes at a sleepover. "Okay, seriously," she whispered. "What do you do?" I looked at her, thought about it for a second, and said, "I show up when I'm needed." She laughed, assuming it was a joke. I didn't explain. Because that's the thing about truth. When it's real, it doesn't need to be proven. It doesn't ask for acknowledgement or beg to be heard. It just exists. And you can stand in it without needing to raise your voice. There are still moments, now and then, when I catch myself remembering that day. The car. The silence. The way every head in the backyard turned as the woman in the suit said, "I'm here for her." I don't replay it for satisfaction. I'm not collecting those moments like trophies. But I do let them remind me, not of who they were, but of who I became. Because I didn't get where I am by shouting louder or trying harder to be seen. I got here by stepping out of the roles they cast for me. The freeloader. The late bloomer. The deadbeat. And now? I wake up in the morning, swipe my badge at a building most people don't know exists, and sit down at a desk where my voice matters. I troubleshoot systems no civilian will ever hear about. I write code that might never be credited. And I'm okay with that. More than okay. Because the people who matter know what I do. And the ones who used to define me by what they could see? They don't get a front row seat anymore. Not because I shut them out, but because they never earned the right to stay. I've learned something over the past 2 years, not about the job or the protocols or the clearance levels, but about silence, about space, about how distance can be a boundary and a blessing all at once. I don't hate my family. I don't resent them. But I don't confuse access with love anymore. And I don't equate closeness with care. They reach out sometimes, my mom with holiday check-ins, my brothers with occasional texts about birthdays or BBQs. I keep the replies light, friendly. I don't offer details, and they've stopped asking for them. We've found a new rhythm. One where they don't pretend to understand me, and I don't feel the need to explain myself. It's not cold. It's clean. And maybe that's the best version of peace we're going to have. The last time Max texted, it was just a photo, Dad standing by the grill again, holding up a pair of tongs like he was giving a TED Talk. Beneath it, the message, "Still doesn't know how to light it without you." I smiled. I didn't reply. Because the truth is, I'm not that version of me anymore. The one who fixed everything in the background. The one who laughed off the jabs and absorbed the silence. The one who waited, hoping someone would finally see her. Now, I don't need to be seen to know I'm real. I don't need the jokes to stop to feel respected. And I don't need to explain my life for it to have meaning. They called me a deadbeat once. Now, they just call and hope I answer. But I've learned that the best kind of revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's knowing you never needed to. Thanks for watching. Have you ever kept quiet while someone underestimated you, then let the truth speak for itself? Or had to walk away from family just to protect your peace? Drop your story in the comments. I read every one. And if you've ever been called something you knew deep down wasn't true, hit that like button, share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more real stories about knowing your worth, even when no one else does.